You learn anything from our podcast, if you have a kid
Yeah.
and they wet the bed,
It's all right.
like, tell them it's okay.
Stop giving them
Don't
a
put
drink.
their pee-pee blankets out for the world to
Now, if they're
see.
peeing
And
their pants while they're outside playing and refuse to come
that's a
in,
little
that's a
different.
different
That's
story.
a little
But if
different.
you're giving them drinks all the way up to bedtime and this and this and this and this and they're peeing in bed,
And then shaming them for
yeah,
it. Don't shame them for it.
parenting 101.
Yep.
Don't do that. And we're good. We got teenagers. We
Yeah,
know
so
what we're talking
we're
about.
still alive. Yeah, we haven't.
Yeah. So, we were talking about how the police. We weren't talking about this. We were talking about him crying.
His mom.
And his
Yeah.
mom, early childhood. So we're going to play one more clip, and then we're going to move into where we believe he began killing in the early 1980s.
1982 is what they.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was there, in the bathtub washing me off. She had to hold my penis and wash around.
How old were you when that occurred? How young were you?
Maybe up to 8 or 9 or something like that.
Does that sound normal to you?
I thought it was normal. No, I thought it was normal.
These people are not 100% bad 100% of their lives. It takes developmental issues to get them to the point where they are. But there was a time in Gary's life that I think if there was intervention, it would have been when he was young. Now, the goal is to take me to that point in your life when sexual fantasies become violent. Mr. Ridgway, we talked about your mom's role in your development. When did you think about killing your mom? And convince these women that he could be trusted.
Well, one of them was, first she wants to see my ID. So I whip out my ID, and with my ID would be my son's picture on the backside, and they'd see that, and that would lower any big defenses.
Mm-hmm. But you were really using your son as part of your ruse. That's extremely manipulative when you think you used your son to convince women to come into the car. And that goes to the soul of someone who's psychopathic. Sure, you having to say, oh yeah, well, I did that too. I make the assumption to them that I know this occurred. Let's talk about when it occurred.
Fourth grade, or when I had trouble with the school, I had she didn't have any patience.
When did you think about having sex with your mother?
When 14 or 15, I think.
When violence and sex become intertwined, that's a critical period of development for sex.
Okay. So, there, we were just saying that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that relationship is important. And lines and boundaries and healthy thinking and healthy touching and acceptance and speaking out loud. We come from a long line of people who just like, suck it up, suck it up, suck it up, you know. But now we have a bunch of babies, too.
Oh, the way the world is now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, it's not even the way it is now to me. It's more like how it was when we were growing up as compared to how it is now. It's so different already. Like, it's crazy how different already. And it wasn't even that long.
Mm-mm.
Ours was like 15, 20 years ago. Yeah.
19 years ago.
Well, yeah.
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 Yeah. So, as a result, when he started becoming violent and sexual and choking prostitutes for biting him, he said, he also was arrested for soliciting anyway. An undercover cop came and got him, I think that same year or the following year.
I think it was the same year.
And then he started murdering women. People came across a pile of women.
It was, at least 6 bodies?
6 bodies.
Yeah.
And he became known, that's how they called him the Green River Killer because it was along the Green River in Washington State. And they formed 25 detectives, I think.
Yeah, a task force.
Called the Green River Killer Task Force. And it went on for about 11 years. And they followed about 3 different suspects before coming upon Gary.
Yeah,
but they
were really, the one guy, they were really...
harassed the shit out of him because he was friendly with the prostitutes, gave him food,
and I think
gave him rides.
Said he had already, something was already with a murder. He was already tied to one murder before.
Probably.
Yeah, something like that.
But he ended up failing their polygraph test. And Gary passed his, being the Green River Killer.
He probably passed it as good Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes to a level of manipulation as well. And coolness. And see, that's why I think he thought he was righteous and on a mission. He felt entitled to kill these women.
It was like this little boy decided to play decide to play the ultimate badass guy.
Norman Bates.
Some weird,
yeah, like some...
You see, because inside, when he's talking, he's actually like, these, this poor little boy who was shamed by his... And then so he decides, like, I'm not going to be ashamed, and I'm going to pretend to be the biggest, baddest guy ever. Yeah.
And it didn't matter if they were white, black, whatever.
No, he didn't have a car. Yeah, whoever trusted him enough to go with him.
Yeah. And see, they let him go, and then they had to disband, and they didn't catch him till 2001. Because of new
They even had evidence. Yeah, it was just the way DNA.
And they could
it's
tie
crazy.
To
even
4 victims.
Yeah, like they didn't have the ability to test all that DNA back then, like they do now. So they're solving cases from 20 years ago with the DNA samples they took way back then.
Right, and I came across a good website, Unsolved West Virginia Mysteries or something on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I want to give a shout out to that because that has a lot of stuff, and I want to get into some of those unsolved murder cases and as we carry on.
Yeah, like I always think about Childers still.
Well, this is a couple chicks. Like the one was found in a crawl space in her dorm in 2007.
Oh wow.
A young college chick. Right.
I don't know. That might be one that and I don't know yet.
Yeah. That's what, but
no, you're a good snoop.
Yeah. So there's a few things we're going to get into. So that's a little bit. So after this task force even called in Ted Bundy and Ann Rule.
Yeah.
And if you listen to our earlier podcast, Ann Rule was a good friend of Ted Bundy's. And after he did the Omega Chi murders, or Chi Omega, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Which we didn't finish that story.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we're at that point with Ted. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're doing where he ties in with old Gary here.
Yeah.
Like, I always think about, too, like, poor Washington. They dealt with Ted Bundy, and then, like, right after Ted Bundy, there was, like, maybe 1 year of peace, because Ted Bundy was, 79. Gary is, like, 81, 82, like, to maybe, like, 1 year.
There, too, just up and down the highways consistently.
Yeah.
I-70 murders were going on. He's never been caught.
I wonder who took over in Washington.
As we'll talk next week about people working in packs.
Right, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's happening.
There's probably some serial killer union and...
Right. So Gary Ridgway is still alive.
Yeah.
And we were speaking of, together, Amy and I, of writing him a letter and asking several different questions, just seeing if maybe we could get him. He's in Washington State.
Seeing if he'd respond.
There's a few questions I want to know. But anyway, when they consulted Bundy, it was because he was fucking wacko, man. Just psycho. Towards the end, after he escaped, like we were talking about last week, he's losing weight, crawling through a little hole. He
lost 30 pounds to fit through that hole.
He's like fucked up.
Yeah, he's that. And then he has, like, his IQ's 140, so he's double Gary Ridgway's.
He's super smart.
Pretty much, yeah.
He was like 120.
Yeah, like he had a higher IQ than normal, yeah. Not like genius level, but yeah.
So, he was like, man, went clear across to Florida, got an apartment under Chris Hager, and decided to walk into a sorority house and murdered the shit out of 2 of these women, shoved a fucking hairspray bottle in her vagina, beat them with a fucking log.
There was how many he attacked? 4 or 5, right?
4.
4, and 2 died, and to survive.
Yeah, because it got interrupted and he ran away, went to that apartment building.
And went to another place that night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he made a name for himself in Florida is what he did.
And they caught him, and that's who fucking gave him the chair.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
In 1989. So during the 80s, while he was sitting on death row, because he was the most prolific serial killer
at that time.
He was I mean, he's still unique, and he's still a very unique case.
Like right now, he's blowing up the internet because of all of the anniversary of his execution.
Yeah, it just happened.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, he was attractive, like as we all know, and everybody swooned over him, and some still believe it wasn't him, and he represented his own self and had this great upstanding, law student attitude and persona. You see it in his damn eyes. He's a fucking psycho. So that's his story. So while they were consulting him, he's the one that told him that Ridgway would go back to sleep with them.
And not a fresh dump site.
Mm-hmm.
Stake it out instead of taking the body.
Right.
Or one that they had just found a body at.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he didn't know she wasn't there anymore.
And that would be his special victims that fought back, that got buried alone and not ditched like trash. And Bundy had a preference like pretty women.
So Ridgway even had a good and bad with his victims. Mm-hmm. Everything in his life is yin and yang.
The balance.
Yeah.
The little devil on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Like he was
So he even treated the victims who fought for their lives.
Or some kind of angel of mercy. Like that's what I said. He's pretty much your model of what you think a serial killer would be.
Pretty much. They always throw religion into the serial killers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ted didn't have that problem.
No, he liked pretty women. He liked to hurt them. He liked to dominate pretty women. And we were talking about some of the imagery that they were growing up with, these guys, because they were born back. I mean, Ridgway's a lot younger.
Like Ridgway, I think he was different than Bundy in the way Ted Bundy just like unleashed a beast on the women.
Yeah.
Ridgway, I could see him just slowly choking them out. Yeah.
And he probably cried while he did it. He
probably
cried
because he's he probably did, and that's probably when he was choking them.
Yeah.
I hate your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You women are temptation.
Kemper's another one. Like I like Ed Kemper. I can't help myself. I like him. He's smart. He had a higher IQ than Bundy.
Wow.
And 140
is on the genius level.
Is it?
Because 120 is above.
Well, Kemper's higher, and he actually did. Good. Okay, here's Amy's little corner, I guess. Yeah, Ed Kemper, he murdered co-eds. I think like there's only like 5 or 6 maybe, but he would pick up hitchhikers and stuff like that too.
Damn.
And he was super, like I said, super smart. At 15, he went to live with his grandparents. He shot his grandmother during an argument, and then killed his grandfather before he got back into the house because the grandfather was gone on an errand because he didn't want his grandpa to know that he had shot his grandmother. So he's in a mental institution until he's 21. He's released back to his mom at 21, and he starts killing co-eds and doing his and he was like 6'4". He was a big guy. He hung out at the local bar with all the other cops. And people like that. So
he hung out with him.
Yeah, he hung out with during the investigation too.
They love that shit.
He hung out with the cops, and
even
his mom. He's like, eventually, I decided I was going to kill my mom, and it would all end. And he turns himself in after he kills his mom and her friend too.
He killed victims that look like her.
No, he killed co-eds
that made his mom look like her.
I think he killed. I don't know, because you'd think he would kill middle-aged women if that was
right. Unless his version, the one that was mean to him, was a young mom.
Maybe. No, because his mom was always mean to him. He said on the night he decided to kill her, he walked into her room, and she's like up reading or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, I suppose you want to talk all night."
Jesus.
And he walked, yeah. So he said he walked out, and he come back, and she had said something about it was his fault. She hadn't had any dates and all this, or this type of stuff, yeah. And I guess when he killed her, he bashed her head with a hammer. He cut her head off, used it as a dartboard, threw her larynx part down the garbage disposal, and it spit back at him. And he said that was like karma because she was always bitching at him anyway. So her larynx and stuff like flew back, and he fucked her too. The headless body. Because he said when she said that to him, he's like, "There, now you have, Mom." Like he hated her that much too. I guess he had sex with her body too. To degrade her, though.
Thinking?
Well, because she bitched at him and said she hadn't been laid in all these years. So that was another insult. No, I know. He was too shy.